12:23 this morning, Tuesday morning, officers from the Annapolis Police Department received a call to the 1900 block of Copeland Street for a man assaulting a woman. Within 1 minute, at around 12:24, two officers of the police department arrived in the 1900 block of Copeland Street. And the first officer to show up on the scene is a 15-year veteran of the patrol section of the police department, who is also a member of the agency's SWAT team. The officer exited his car and noticed a man who was later identified as William Ronaldo Brown, Jr., 31 years of age, June 15, 1982 is his birth date, of multiple addresses, but also 1900 block of Copeland Street, walking out of one of the houses in that block, holding a knife in his hand. At the same time, the officer noticed a woman on the ground who was identified as Renesha Sims, 29 years of age, laying on the ground unconscious or semi-conscious, and it seems that she may have been yelling for help at that time. The officer acted quickly. He was within 15 or 20 feet from both the victim on the ground and Mr. Brown, and the officer fired several shots with a service weapon to stop an assault. What we understand is that the assault continued. Mr. Brown was able to stab Ms. Sims one more time in front of the officer in the presence of police. Both Ms. Sims and Mr. Brown were unconscious at that point and taken to Anne Arundel Medical Center, where they were pronounced dead shortly after by staff doctors. We did speak with a number of witnesses who in fact were there at the time. We learned within moments what had happened was a neighbor saw an assault taking place. What he saw was Mr. Brown punching and stabbing Ms. Sims before the police arrived. The neighbor tried to disarm Mr. Brown, was able to. There was one knife involved at that point, pushed the knife away from him, and both Mr. Brown and the neighbor retreated back into respective houses. Again, the police were called at that point, and Mr. Brown came out of the house within a minute or so with another knife, and that assault was witnessed by our officers on the scene, and that is the assault that the officers tried desperately to stop. The officer was not injured. There were no other injuries, and the officer is currently here with detectives in the Annapolis Police Department.
What are the events that actually led up to police shooting that suspect?
We got a call just around, again, 23 minutes after the hour. Neighbors, at least one call, heard a fight, heard some screaming, call for help. It was apparent that a man was beating a woman. To some neighbors and others, again, saw a knife involved. So we got the call there. The officer showed up very quickly. A response time within 1 minute is about as good as you're going to find, about as lucky and good, in a police department for officers to show up on the scene. The officer tried, very hard to stop this assault. He acted professionally, and he acted with good judgment and with apparent justification when he took action and fired on the suspect.
It's not the first time you guys have come across Brown before, is it?
No, it's not. Mr. Brown does have a history of arrests. He's also what we call a VPI, a Violent Prevention Initiative probation person. We are familiar with Mr. Brown. We've arrested him a number of times, upward of 10 times in Annapolis. Most recently, in August of 2012, Mr. Brown was charged with a robbery and an attempted kidnapping in Annapolis, and we understand that he received a sentence of 10 years, and most of that was suspended. I believe 120 days was served. Also, in July 2012, he assaulted Ms. Sims, again, within a month of that other charge, and he received a sentence that was suspended.
You know why he was let out so quickly after all that?
I don't have those cases in front of me. I wasn't able to see. I don't know whether there was an issue. The state's attorney may have made that decision or may have tried the case, and that's the way it ended. I don't have that information.
Were they living together?
Well, what we know is that she does, and that there have been arrests where Mr. Brown has used that address. We do have other addresses. I would say some would consider him homeless because there are multiple addresses, and that's the information that we have right now.
Can you describe the nature of their relationship at all?
It's our understanding that they have children, so they've been involved in a relationship.
He stabbed her one more time after being shot?
Yeah. We're piecing together what's happened right now. The best of my determination, and after talking with the detectives, it appears that he was shot and then again, stabbed her. So he was, you know, as much as we tried to stop the assault, we weren't successful, and so she was stabbed again.
Did he ever come after the officer, or was Brown's focus solely on Ms. Sims?
Right. We don't know. The officer was in direct line, so it was the officer who gets out of his car, a victim between Mr. Brown and the officer. The officer may have been approaching to try to help Ms. Sims, but at the same time, the suspect was walking towards the officer. So I think the officer could have reasonably perceived that his life was threatened also.
One officer fired.
It was one officer.
Do you know how
Others
many
said two
children they
responded
had?
to.
There were officers showing up as a backup. It's our practice that when we get these types of calls, other officers show up. The one officer who got out of the car, the first officer, within seconds, another officer showed up.
You said they had children. Do you know how many?
Well, there were two children. There were two children. There was a 2-year-old and there was a 9-year-old.
Were they
Both
there?
held
Did they
at the
see
time.
And
this?
yes, both were there. I'm not able to comment as to what the children saw or didn't see, but the children are with family members right now.
No, it's early to say conclusively, but some of the residents who live around there said that, I guess, Willie Brown was kind of known to use PCP a lot. Did he seem like he might have been under the influence of something?
Well, we'll know soon enough. I personally don't know whether he was under the influence. I didn't drill down into the details as to what the officers thought at the time. It would surprise me, but I have no information on that.
You said that a neighbor rendered help, was able to get the first weapon from Mr. Brown, and then he went inside. Did anyone else come out to offer aid to Ms. Sims, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
You said you didn't know if both children were his?
Right, I don't know factually whether both children were his. Initially, we believed that they were. You know, I don't want to be certain.
And to your knowledge, when the person who rendered help the first time went back inside, did he go back inside to call the police, or he went back inside to get out of Mr. Brown's?
Well, I want to stress that I think that it was very heroic on the part of the neighbor to try to intervene on a violent assault. From what I gather, he went back inside. He managed to kick the knife away. I think he was with another person in the house. They secured the knife. You know, I want to think that he was trying to protect himself, but also he was getting into a position where, you know, he may have been able to call the police. He was able to see from inside it from a point of safety. You know, he tried, as we, the police department, tried to stop the assault. He managed, he helped at that point, but, you know, again, within, you know, moments, Mr. Brown ran into the house and was intent on doing what he started and got another knife from the house.
Prior to Ms. Sims coming out of her home, having been stabbed, did the neighbors hear any arguments or anything going on at that time from inside of the home, or did everything happen outside?
Well, let me say there were several witnesses and people who heard a commotion. Some may have heard from inside their house. I don't believe that they heard a fight occurring inside the house. What was taking place outside drew their attention. The screaming for help was from outside, and so people heard that and called us.
What's the procedure now with the officer? You said he was here now.
Yeah, it's routine that officers involved in shootings. Again, this appears to be you know, a justified shooting. The officer acted properly, but you know, it's good practice, and it's our practice to put officers on administrative leave during the investigation for a period of time.
Do you know the number of shots fired?
I can tell you that Mr. Brown was shot at least 5 times. He was shot 3 times in the lower extremities and twice in the arm. It was 5 or 6 shots.
Sir, can you just explain a little more on the VPI? What is that?
Okay. You know, in parlance of probation, there's standard probation and then there's an enhanced probation. So there's a policy that the state has that if you are, you know, a very violent offender, if you had a handgun history, if you've had multiple arrests, and depending on what those arrests are, you qualify for this enhanced supervision. When you're on this enhanced supervision, you know, the courts are aware of that, your probation agents are aware, and we do, you know, much more strict checks. We're out there more often. We're keeping an eye on people, as are and should the courts, when people are on this status. We do have others that are on a VPI status in Maryland and some more in Annapolis also.
And he was in this status category because of what offense?
Yeah, it looks like he was put on the VPI status as a result of the August.
Who was the kidnapping victim in that? It wasn't Miss.
No, it was it was not Miss Sims. It was someone else. It was a female victim. And it's our understanding he may have been under the influence of drugs at that time as well.
PCP, or do you know?
I don't know.
Chief, do Annapolis Police carry tasers, and will that be part of the review, taser versus use of,
Well, Annapolis Police are carrying tasers. We are in the process of outfitting every officer with tasers. Patrol officers do have tasers, and we know that tasers are effective. In this particular case, however, there would not have been time to act with a taser. This was immediate, and the need to fire a gun was reasonable, and it was probably, in all likelihood, the best choice would have been made at the time.
Does this leave you with any concerns about the effectiveness of the VPI then at this point? If something like this could happen and he's supposed to be under close supervision?
Well, all I can say is it's not a panacea. VPI is a status, it's helpful to law enforcement. We've had great results from being able to work with the state's attorney and Department of Probation to find violators and to enhance these checks, and so it's kept some behavior in check, I believe. You know, I'm not discouraged per se because a VPI offender was still out on the street, but that, the status of the cases that never resulted in incarceration would be something we would want to look at and talk to our partners in the criminal justice system to find out, to dig into those cases and to find out why. We can have answers as to why he wasn't in jail at the time. But again, I'm not questioning the VPI status or its effectiveness.
It's more about why he was out so soon that you guys are bothered by.
No, I'm concerned, absolutely. And there are cases where people are out because of for want of evidence, for a plea agreement. I don't know what caused this in this case.
So at the time, Mr. Brown did not have any open warrants?
Right? I don't believe he had any open warrants.
Chief, can you clarify, you said the officer involved is a 15-year veteran, this paper says 14.
Right, and we're gonna split hairs there. Go with 14.
Okay.
My math may not be good, it's real fuzzy this morning. The paper also says that we received a call at 12:21, and I told you 12:22, 12:23. It was within a second of ticking over. I'm comfortable with the idea of what I just said when we got the call within 1 minute afterwards. We responded.
You also said the officer was a 15-year veteran. Your press release says 14.
Right. Yeah, I just went back and said, let's go with 14.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear.
Let's go with 14.
Okay.
Has this
Mea
officer,
culpa.
has this officer been involved in any other shootings?
Yeah, the officer has been involved in one other shooting. It was a justified shooting. He was not the victim police officer. He was there on the scene to protect another officer several years ago. And the officer was involved in one prior shooting, police department.
Did anyone die in that shooting?
Yes, there was a fatality.
I'm sorry, can you explain that again? What was his
Yeah,
role?
well, it involved the SWAT team, and he was a member of the SWAT team and currently is a member of the SWAT team. And officers were called into a dangerous situation. They knew they were looking for a dangerous person, and that person presented a danger to the team and threatened them with a weapon, and he was, police shot him at the time.
And
Threatened him personally, or
I don't
one of
have
the
that.
members of the team?
I don't, the members of the team were there, it was the whole team. They were entering the house. They were in the process of trying to secure the house. There was gunfire both ways. Police did what they could to stop that. He was involved in that shooting. There were several officers who discharged their firearms at that time.
and he was one of the several.
He was one, yes.
What year did you say that was?
I think it was about 8 years ago, 7 years ago.
When will you release the name of the officer?
Okay, we're going to release the name very soon. In fairness to the officers, just as all families of victims, we want to make sure that people that are related or close to him understand from him what's going on, so not to, so it would be within a day.
Do you have any more details on multiple, how many times she was stabbed?
Right, I do understand that she was stabbed multiple times in the upper body. I know she was stabbed once in the chest. I don't have the details on how many times she was stabbed.
Were there any restraining orders or anything like that that you're aware of, where he was supposed to?
No, there were no
Keep
restraining
clear.
orders, and that's a question, that's something we immediately looked at. There were no restraining orders.
Did you say how big the knife was? Or what kind of knife?
The knives were different sizes. Again, there was a knife involved originally, and that was, I I believe, a folding type of knife. The second knife was a kitchen knife. I don't know exactly how big the knife was. Mayor Josh Cohen.
Morning, I'm Mayor Josh Cohen. I want to make two general points. One, I want to recognize the work of the police department. This was a tragic situation, and the details are still unfolding. Obviously, a lot of you, as folks in the media, are concerned about getting all the details right. What are the facts of the case? But I want to stress that if the officer did not respond promptly, and if he did not take immediate action as he did, this could potentially have been an even more tragic situation than it was. And so my thoughts are with the police officer, and but I want to recognize the work of the police department. Second point is that like I said, the details of this case are still unfolding, but there's a very human element to this. It's a very tragic situation, certainly for the immediate family members of the victim. Annapolis may be the capital city of Maryland, but we're still a very small town. And I'm looking at the last names of the two folks involved, Sims and Brown. These are family names that are all throughout Annapolis. And something like this is not just a case that we get to the bottom of and then we move on a couple days later onto something else. This is something that's going to have a lasting impact, not just on the immediate family members, but on much broader extended family throughout the community. I'm going to be reaching out to the family today. Bywater is a close-knit neighborhood, and I and others are going to be working to make sure that we're responding to the trauma, to the emotional needs, and working to address whatever emotional issues that there are in this. Because separate from the interest in the homicide itself, there's some long-lasting impacts that we also need to be mindful of. Thank you.
Is that a city supervised or, I guess, public housing complex?
No, Bywater is a privately owned housing complex. I believe it's by Bywater Mutual Homes. It's not the city, it's not the housing authority. The city of Annapolis is predominantly, if not entirely, subsidized housing, but it's a private housing complex.
Are you concerned about security there? I've heard neighbors kind of complain about just that the security is not very good there.
Recent years, crime has been at an all-time low, including violent crime. In the past, going back 5-10 years, there were frequent complaints about not just violent crime, but drug activity. There's still complaints we get, but the police department is on it. I mean, it's not by happenstance that an officer was just 1 minute away. So in terms of this particular case, even though the details are still unfolding, it appears to be one of these tragic domestic situations that could happen anywhere in any community in the country. It does not appear to be related to an open-air drug market or one of these chronic problems. Because fortunately, like I said, crime is at an all-time